Have you ever seen a child so brave that he walked into a biker clubhouse and asked 30 grown men, "Can you be my dad for one day?" What happened next didn't just silence the room, it changed every single life inside it. Before we go on, allow me to wish you peace and good health. Tell me, from which country and at what time are you watching this story? The door to the Iron Compass Clubhouse creaked open just as the sun began to fall behind the pines that framed the town of Bozeman, Montana. The golden light spilled across the wooden floorboards, cutting through the haze of cigarette smoke and the heavy scent of oil and leather. It was the kind of light that made the dust look like it was dancing. Every man inside turned toward the door and fell silent. In the doorway stood a boy, 11, maybe 12. His hair was the color of old wheat, uncombed and sticking up in the back. A backpack hung from one shoulder, the strap nearly torn. He wasn't crying, but his chin trembled in a way that said he was holding everything together by threads. And just below his left eye bloomed a purple bruise, sharp at the edges, not yet faded. Jack Monroe set down his mug of black coffee. He'd been talking with Diesel about a carburetor when the boy appeared. But now the entire clubhouse men, in worn boots, grease-stained jeans, and leather vests, had gone still. The jukebox hummed low, half a song hanging in the air. Even the ceiling fan seemed to pause. "You lost, kid?" Diesel asked, his voice rough but not unkind. The boy swallowed hard, eyes darting to the row of motorcycles gleaming by the wall. "No, sir," he whispered. I came to ask something. Jack pushed his chair back, slow enough that it didn't scrape. He'd seen that look before. Fear, pride, and desperation all tangled together. It lived in mirrors years ago when his own daughter was still alive. "Go ahead," he said quietly. The boy took a breath that shuddered through his chest. "Can you be my dad for one day?" For a heartbeat, no one moved. Words hung heavy, like the smoke that curled above the pool table. Some of the men looked down. Others stared at the boy, as if trying to understand what kind of courage it took to walk into a room like this and ask for that. Jack's throat tightened. "Why one day?" "It's career day," the boy said. "At school, everyone's bringing their parents to talk about their jobs." He hesitated, twisting the strap of his backpack. "I don't have anyone to bring." Jack leaned forward. "What's your name, son?" "Ellie. Ellie Turner." His voice steadied when he said it, like speaking his own name reminded him he still existed. The men exchanged quiet glances. Someone set down a beer. The radio clicked off. Outside, a crow called once before the silence folded back in. Jack noticed the bruise again, fresh, still ringed in red. "That eye," he said softly. "You take a fall?" Eli shook his head. "No, sir." Then, after a pause, "Mom's boyfriend. He gets mad when she's at work." Jack felt something old stir in his chest, a spark that burned through the years of regret and noise. Around him, the other bikers shifted, uneasy. Most had their own scars from fathers who'd been drunk, absent, or cruel. Ellie looked down, voice trembling but brave. "My real dad died in Afghanistan 4 years ago. Mom says he was a good man, but she works nights now, double shifts at the hospital. The boyfriend, he gets mean when he drinks." Jack stood slowly, leather vest creaking. "Does your teacher know?" "No, she already worries too much. And I don't want to get Mom in trouble." He rubbed the edge of the dog tag hanging from his neck, a small piece of metal dull from years of touching. Jack caught the glint of it in the light and felt a pinch behind his ribs. Diesel muttered, "Damn." Miguel, sitting near the window, turned away, blinking hard. The kid swallowed again, summoning strength he didn't know he had. "I just thought, if one of you came, maybe people would stop calling me names. Maybe they'd leave me alone." Jack met the eyes of every man in the room. They all understood without saying a word. Each of them had once been that boy, small, scared, wanting someone to stand up for them. He cleared his throat. "Friday, you said?" Eli nodded. 9:30, room 12. Jack straightened his shoulders. "All right, then." He looked around. "Who's got Friday morning free?" Every hand went up. The boy blinked, not sure he'd heard right. "All of you?" Jack's mouth twitched into the ghost of a smile. "We'll be there, Eli. All of us." Eli's mouth opened a little, as if he wanted to say thank you but couldn't make the sound. The boy's eyes shone with something Jack hadn't seen in a long time, hope, raw and trembling. "You mean it?" Eli whispered. Jack nodded. "We don't say things we don't mean." Diesel gave a low chuckle. "Guess we've got some homework to do, boys. Gotta figure out what to say at career day." The room lightened, just a little. A few of the men started talking about bringing helmets or photos of their charity rides, laughing under their breath at the thought of facing a room full of kids. But beneath the laughter was something deeper, a silent promise that this wouldn't be just a show. Jack turned back to Eli. "Does your mom know about this?" "She's tired all the time," Eli said. "She works nights at the hospital. I don't want to worry her. I just wanted to do it myself." Jack knelt so they were eye level. The boy's backpack hung loose, one strap frayed, a corner patched with duct tape. Jack's own daughter used to patch her school bag the same way. He swallowed hard. "Listen, Eli," he said quietly. "Protecting your mom by staying quiet, that's not your job. You hear me? A kid's job is to learn and be safe. The rest is on us grown-ups." Eli blinked fast, like he was trying not to cry. "I didn't know who else to ask." "You did the right thing," Jack said. "Takes guts to walk through that door." Diesel stepped forward, clapping Jack's shoulder. "We got 4 days, boss. 4 days to make sure this kid walks in there proud." "Yeah," Jack murmured. 4 days. The men started talking plans, who could bring what, which bikes would fit in the school lot, who talked first. Miguel scribbled ideas on a napkin. Ben offered to bring photos from the last toy run for the children's hospital. Someone else suggested polishing all the bikes until they gleamed like mirrors. While they talked, Eli stood a little taller. The bruise still marked his face, but his shoulders straightened, his chin lifted. It was as if the air around him had changed, the way light shifts after a storm. When everything was settled, Jack found the boy again at the door. "You remember the time, 9:30? Eli nodded. "Good. And Eli?" Jack paused, voice softer now. "We're going to handle this. Not just career day. All of it." The boy frowned slightly, unsure what that meant, but something in Jack's eyes told him he could trust it. He smiled, a real smile this time, and slipped out into the fading light. The clubhouse stayed silent until the sound of his footsteps faded down the gravel road. Then Diesel exhaled a low whistle. "That kid's got more courage than half the men I've met." Jack didn't answer. He was still looking at the door, lost in thought. Miguel leaned on the counter. "You all right, Jack?" Jack rubbed a thumb over the ring on his hand. Silver, scratched. A ghost from another life. "I'm fine," he said, though his voice said otherwise. "Just thinking." About what? He stared at the empty doorway where Eli had stood moments ago. The setting sun cut a sharp line of gold across the floor, catching the dust, the oil stains, the years. "What if," Jack said softly, "this is the one thing I can still get right?" Outside, the evening deepened, the rumble of a distant truck echoing through the valley. Inside, the men of the Iron Compass sat in quiet thought tough, scarred men who had just agreed, without a fight or a word, to become something none of them had ever been before. Protectors in the truest sense. The air in the clubhouse felt different now, warmer, lighter, and far down the road, a small boy named Eli Turner walked home under the amber glow of streetlights, clutching the strap of his backpack, unaware that 32 bikers had just changed the course of his life, and maybe, in their own way, their own. Friday morning rolled into Bozeman beneath a ceiling of gray clouds. The air held that cool, metallic scent that comes just before rain. Eli Turner woke before dawn, the old alarm clock still blinking 5 a.m. He lay still for a moment, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of his mother's car leaving for the hospital. She'd kissed his forehead before she left, whispering, "Be brave, sweetheart." He dressed carefully in his only button-up shirt, the one his mom had bought for his father's funeral. The collar was a little tight now, but he smoothed it with small, nervous hands. He checked the mirror. The bruise around his eye had faded to a pale yellow, like an old leaf. On his chest, the dog tag rested against the fabric, cold, solid, a heartbeat of metal. Across town, at the Iron Compass Clubhouse, Jack Monroe was already on his third cup of coffee. 31 bikes lined the gravel outside, polished until the chrome could catch the morning light, even through the cloud cover. Diesel stood at the door, laughing quietly as Miguel tried to convince 2 newer members to wear clean shirts. Can't have the school thinking we're an oil spill with tattoos, Miguel teased. Speak for yourself. Diesel grinned, snapping on his gloves. Jack stepped out onto the porch and looked at them, this strange, rough family of his. You boys ready to play, gentlemen? Diesel tipped his head. We were born ready, boss. Jack smiled faintly, though the weight in his chest was heavier than he'd admit. He hadn't set foot in a school since his daughter Tessa's memorial ceremony years ago. The thought of kids' laughter, tiny desks, and the smell of floor polish pressed against his memories like salt on an open wound. But today wasn't about him. It was about a boy who had been brave enough to ask for help. By 9:15 a.m., Bozeman Elementary was buzzing with the noise of parents arriving, the click of heels, the laughter of teachers, the shuffle of folding chairs in room 12. Colorful posters filled the walls. Dream big. What do you want to be? Eli sat at the back of the classroom, hands folded so tight his knuckles whitened. He'd spent the whole morning rehearsing what he'd say if they didn't show. It's okay, Mrs. Peterson. They must have been busy. He told himself he wouldn't cry. Across the room, Nicholas Briggs, the tall boy with perfect hair and a voice like vinegar, leaned over. You ready for your big presentation, orphan boy? He whispered. Oh wait, you don't have anyone coming, right? Eli's stomach clenched. He stared at the floor tiles, the blue squares that blurred under his vision. Nicholas's friends laughed under their breath. My dad's bringing his Mercedes, one said. Mine's a Pilot, another added. Nicholas smirked. What's yours bringing, Eli? A coffin? Laughter rippled quietly through the rows. Mrs. Peterson shushed them, but the damage had already been done. Eli kept his eyes on the clock. 9:29. Outside, the low rumble began. At first, it was faint, like a faraway storm rolling across the valley, but it grew deeper, louder, steady. The windows began to tremble in their frames. A few students gasped. What's that? Mrs. Peterson murmured, moving toward the window. Then came the chorus, the synchronized thunder of 32 motorcycle engines echoing off the school's brick walls. Chrome gleamed even beneath the clouded light. The formation was perfect, an arrow of steel and leather slicing through the parking lot. Every head turned toward the windows. The class fell completely silent. Even Nicholas's father, who had been showing off his polished cufflinks to another parent, froze mid-gesture. Jack led the group at the front, his black Harley rumbling like a heartbeat. He swung off the bike, removed his helmet, and the air shifted. He wasn't smiling. He didn't need to. Mrs. Peterson's mouth opened slightly. Oh my goodness. The doors to the school swung wide as the men filed in leather vests marked with the emblem of a compass and wings. Their boots echoed against the linoleum, slow and respectful. Children pressed close to the walls, whispering in awe. Jack stopped at the door to room 12. Justin Miller? He began, then caught himself, remembering the name. Eli Turner? The boy's heart thudded. He rose, voice barely a whisper. Here. Jack's gaze softened. We're here for you, kid. El? The classroom erupted in gasps and whispers. Eli's knees almost gave out, but he stood taller, clutching the strap of his backpack like a soldier clutching a flag. Jack turned toward Mrs. Peterson. Ma'am, thank you for having us. We're the Iron Compass Motorcycle Club. Eli asked us to come talk about what we do. The teacher blinked twice, then nodded quickly, stepping aside. Of course. Please, go ahead. Jack walked to the front of the room, his boots tapping lightly on the tile. Behind him, the rest of the bikers spread out, filling the back wall like a dark, quiet wave. The air smelled faintly of rain and motor oil. To the kids, it smelled like mystery. Now, Jack said, resting his hands on the teacher's desk, we're not here to scare anybody. We're here to talk about work, about what we build and who we help. Diesel, his beard braided and neat for the first time in years, stepped forward with a grin. Here's a carburetor, he said, holding up a small metal part. Looks simple, right? But it controls how air and gas mix in an engine. You get it wrong, the whole thing shakes apart. You get it right, it runs smooth. A lot like people, actually. Laughter rippled through the class. Even Mrs. Peterson smiled. Miguel took over next, showing photos from their annual charity rides, lines of bikes stretched across mountain roads, each carrying toys for the Children's Hospital in Billings. Most people see leather and noise. Miguel said softly. They don't see the weekends spent raising money so kids can have Christmas gifts or veterans can get their therapy dogs. That's the good stuff, the real work. Eli watched them, wide-eyed. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like he was shrinking into the background. He felt seen. Then Jack spoke again. Brotherhood, he said simply. That's what this club is built on. Not just riding. It means standing up for each other when nobody else will. Some of us didn't have much of a family growing up. We found one right here. The room had gone so still, you could hear the faint ticking of the clock. In the second row, Nicholas Briggs fidgeted. He wasn't sneering anymore. Even his father, Thomas Briggs, tall, confident, always the loudest man in the room, had gone strangely quiet. Jack turned slightly, nodding toward Miguel. Tell them, brother. Miguel took a step forward. His voice was low and calm, but there was something in it that made everyone listen. I grew up in a house where love looked like a fist, he said. By 13, I was angry at the world, but I met Jack, and he told me something I never forgot. Real strength isn't about hurting people. It's about protecting them. So that's what we do now, we protect. Mrs. Peterson's eyes glistened. She dabbed them quickly with a tissue. Jack looked back at Eli. You ask us to be your dads for a day, he said, his tone gentle. But the thing about family is, it doesn't work on a schedule. You're stuck with us now. The class broke into applause. Kids clapped. Even a few parents joined in. Eli's face flushed red, a smile breaking through the nerves like sunlight through clouds. At the back of the room, Nicholas didn't move. His expression was tangled confusion, shame, something else underneath. His father stood beside him, arms crossed, a forced smile plastered on his face. When the bell rang and the kids spilled into the hallway, the bikers lined up by the door. Each one gave Eli a fist bump or a pat on the shoulder as they passed. Mrs. Peterson stopped Jack before he left. That, she whispered, was one of the most beautiful things I've seen in this classroom. Jack nodded politely. Thank you, ma'am. We just showed up. The brave one's him. Oh. Eli grinned, clutching the photos they'd given him, one of the group standing in front of their bikes, the iron compass patch gleaming like a badge of honor. Out in the parking lot, the engines roared to life again. The bikers rode off in perfect formation, the sound echoing across the playground. Children ran to the windows to wave. Eli stood beside Mrs. Peterson, his heart full in a way he couldn't name. He didn't notice Nicholas watching from the other side of the room, eyes lowered, face pale. Outside the fence, Thomas Briggs watched, too. He adjusted his tie, lips tight, gaze following Jack and the others as they disappeared down the street. His expression wasn't just disapproval, it was something more complicated. Something in his eyes hinted he wasn't just proud of his son for being polite in class. He was hurting, though no one yet knew why. By the time the motorcycles disappeared down Main Street, the gray clouds hanging over Bozeman had thickened into a restless sky. The air felt heavy, as if the whole town was holding its breath. Eli Turner walked home slowly, the small photo from that morning folded carefully inside his backpack. Every few steps, he touched it, as if to make sure it was still real. His shoes crunched over damp leaves along Rouse Avenue. The wind smelled of wood smoke and coming rain. When he reached the small wooden house with the peeling blue paint, the windows were dark. His mother's shift at the hospital wouldn't end until midnight. He unlocked the door quietly and stepped inside. The house felt tired, the kind of tired that seeps into walls and sinks into carpets. A half-eaten sandwich sat on the counter. The TV flickered faintly in the living room, sound low, shadows moving across the walls. Eli dropped his backpack by the couch and pulled the photo back out. 32 bikers, black leather, steel glinting under the clouds, and Jack Monroe standing at the center like someone carved from stone. They had come. They really had. He traced the faces with his finger until his eyes blurred. Upstairs, the old pipes groaned as the wind pushed against the roof. Outside, a truck engine rumbled closer, its sound too familiar. Eli's hand froze. The photo trembled in his grip. The engine cut off. A door slammed. Then footsteps uneven, heavy, soaked in beer. Carl Denton was home early. Eli? The man's voice was rough, slurred at the edges. Where's your mom? Eli's throat tightened. Still at work. Figures. Carl tossed his jacket onto the couch, the smell of alcohol filling the small space. I heard about your little parade at school. His voice curled around the words. Big, tough bikers, huh? Think that makes you special? Eli said nothing. Carl leaned closer, eyes glassy. What? You think you're better than me now? Eli shook his head quickly. No, sir. They just came to talk. Don't lie. The man's shout cracked through the quiet. You made me look like a fool. Everyone at the bar talking about the poor kid who had to borrow himself a daddy. Eli stepped back, his heel hitting the wall. He held the photo tighter. Carl's breath was hot and bitter. What did you tell them, huh? You tell them I hit you? Eli stared at the floor. No, sir. The silence stretched thin, like the second before a storm breaks. Then Carl turned away sharply, grabbing another beer from the counter. You stay out of my sight, he muttered. Eli slipped into his room and closed the door quietly. He sat on the edge of his bed, photo trembling in his lap. The wind outside howled against the windows, making the glass rattle. Somewhere, a loose gutter tapped a steady rhythm against the siding. He pulled the blanket around his shoulders and waited for the sound of his mother's car, the sound that meant the night was over. Across town, Jack Monroe sat in the dim light of the clubhouse office. The glow from the desk lamp caught the lines on his face lines carved by years of road, regret, and silence. He stared at the photograph taken earlier that day, a classroom full of kids and bikers who looked out of place but somehow belonged. He turned the picture over, writing 2 words on the back with a dull pencil. For Eli. The door creaked open. Diesel poked his head in. Can't sleep either? Jack shook his head. Kid's face won't leave my mind. Diesel stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Mine neither. You think he's safe? Jack didn't answer right away. He rubbed his hands together, eyes distant. You ever get the feeling the past keeps finding ways to test you? Diesel chuckled softly. Every day, brother. Jack leaned back, the old chair groaning beneath him. Tessa used to wait up for me, he said quietly. Even when I was late. Even when I broke every promise I ever made. He looked toward the rain sliding down the window. I wasn't there the night she needed me most. Diesel said nothing. There was nothing to say. I can't undo that, Jack murmured. But maybe I can do something right this time. Diesel nodded slowly. So what's next? Jack turned the pencil between his fingers. We keep an eye on him, quietly. Make sure he's got a chance. The rain came in waves, slanting hard against the windows. Bozeman's streets glistened like ribbons of steel under the few working streetlights. Eli stayed curled beneath his blanket, the photo still clutched in his hand. Every sound made him flinch: the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the roof, the low growl of thunder somewhere over the mountains. When the door opened downstairs, he froze again. For one terrifying moment, he thought Carl had come back. But then came the softer sound, his mother's voice. Eli, it's me. Relief broke through him so quickly that his throat hurt. He ran to the stairs and nearly tripped on the last step. Lydia Turner stood in the doorway, shoulders sagging under her rain-soaked coat. The dark circles under her eyes looked deeper than the night outside. She smiled weakly when she saw him. Hey, sweetheart, she whispered. You're still awake? I wanted to wait for you. She brushed the wet hair off his forehead and kissed him there. You didn't have to. Eli hesitated. He was here again. Her smile disappeared. Carl? He nodded. He was mad. Said I embarrassed him. Lydia's face went pale. She set her purse down slowly, as if afraid any sudden movement might break something fragile. Did he hurt you? No, Eli said quickly, though his voice wavered. He yelled a lot. She sank onto the couch, staring at the floor. The clock on the wall ticked loud and merciless. Finally, she whispered, I don't know what to do anymore. Eli sat beside her. The men from the clubhouse. They said they'd help. Her head snapped up. You talked to them? They said they'd be my dads for a day. He managed a small smile. But Jack, he said they'd handle it. All of it. Lydia exhaled shakily. Sweetheart, I don't want you to worry about grown-up things. I'm not worried, he said softly. Not when they're around. Outside, the rain kept falling, heavy and steady, washing the streets clean of dust and lies. Across town, the Copper Elk Diner was nearly empty. A few truckers hunched over late plates of meatloaf while the waitress refilled coffee for the third time. Jack sat in the corner booth, his coat dripping onto the vinyl seat. Diesel and Miguel joined him, their faces weary from another long day. "You ever notice," Diesel said, stirring his coffee, "how some storms don't make noise until they're right on top of you?" Jack gave him a look. "You're talking about the boys' house?" "Yeah." Miguel nodded. "I've seen those bruises before, Jack. Kids don't fall off bikes that many times." Jack stared out the window. The diner's neon sign flickered on the wet glass, open 24 hours. The reflection painted red streaks across his knuckles. "He's not safe there," Jack said finally. "Neither is his mom." Diesel leaned forward. "You plan on barging in?" Jack shook his head. "No, not yet. We do it right. Talk to the sheriff, gather proof. No fists, just light." Miguel's voice softened. "You think she'll leave the man?" Jack's eyes narrowed. "She will, once she knows she's not alone." The waitress came by with a pot of coffee. "You boys need a refill?" Jack smiled faintly. "Ma'am, I think we need more than coffee." She laughed, not knowing how close to the truth that was. They stayed there until the rain eased. By the time Jack left, the streets were slick mirrors. The air was cold enough that every breath hung like smoke. He drove in silence, headlights cutting through the mist until the small wooden house on Rouse Avenue came into view. The porch light was still on. Through the thin curtains he saw two shapes on the couch, a mother and son huddled together, asleep beneath a blanket. The sight hit him like a memory. He shut off the truck's engine and sat there for a long moment, listening to the rain drip from the roof. "You just did it," he whispered to the empty cab. "You asked for help." He looked toward the house one last time, then pulled out his phone. The screen glowed in the dark, lighting his face like a small promise. "Tomorrow," he texted Diesel. "We talked to Harris. No kid gets left behind again." He slipped the phone back into his pocket and started the engine. The headlights swept briefly across the small house, two sleeping figures framed in gold before the truck rolled away down the quiet street. But the porch light stayed on, flickering softly in the rain, as if refusing to go out. Morning came slow to Bozeman, pale and damp after the night's rain. Steam rose off the blacktop as the sun crept over the ridges of the Gallatin Range. At the Copper Elk Diner, the smell of bacon and brewed coffee drifted through the air, mixing with the sound of clinking plates and quiet chatter. Jack Monroe sat in the corner booth, the same one as last night, a stack of napkins beside his empty mug. He'd been there since dawn, writing names and questions on paper scraps, like a man building a plan out of fog. Diesel slid into the seat across from him, his leather jacket still dripping from the ride. Miguel followed, shaking off the cold, nodding to the waitress who'd long stopped asking for their orders. "Morning, boys," she said, pouring coffee. "Doing another ride today?" "Not this time," Diesel replied, offering a half smile. "This one's about a kid." Jack looked up from his notes. "He's not safe. Neither's his mom." Miguel nodded. "We can't just storm in. We need something that sticks." Jack tapped the napkin. "School nurses' reports. If she's seen bruises, there'll be records. Maybe the teachers noticed too. And Harris still owes me a favor." Diesel raised an eyebrow. "The sheriff?" Jack nodded. "He was there when Tessa died. He knows what it's like to lose a child. He won't turn his back on this one." The diner door opened, letting in a breath of cold air and Lydia Turner. She hesitated at the entrance, damp hair clinging to her cheeks, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. Jack stood immediately, motioning her over. "Lydia," he said softly, "you okay?" She shook her head, her voice small. "He knows you came to the school. He's been watching every move I make. I think he's going to do something." Miguel scooted over, letting her sit. Diesel signaled the waitress for another cup. The woman brought it without a word, her kind eyes flicking from Lydia's pale face to the rough men around her. Jack leaned forward. "You ever thought about leaving him?" Her hands trembled around the mug. "I've thought about it every day. But where would I go? He pays the rent. If I run, he'll find us. If I stay, he'll kill what's left of me." Jack's jaw tightened. "Not on our watch." Lydia blinked, tears welling. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know us." Jack met her eyes. "I know what it's like to come home to silence, to want to fix something you didn't break." His voice cracked slightly before he steadied it. "You don't owe him your fear. For a moment, No one spoke. The hum of the diner filled the quiet, the hiss of the grill, the clatter of a coffee pot, a child laughing somewhere near the counter. It felt like the sound of normal life, and Lydia stared at it as if she hadn't heard it in years. Diesel broke the silence. "We'll do this right. Harris can get a warrant, maybe even a restraining order. You got somewhere you can go for a few days?" Lydia shook her head. Jack reached into his pocket and set a small, tarnished key on the table. "Here," he said. "Clubhouse has a spare room. It ain't fancy, but it's safe. You and Eli can stay there till this is done." Her eyes widened. "I can't." "You can," Jack said. "You don't have to carry this alone." "Huh?" She picked up the key with shaking fingers, tracing the cold metal like she wasn't sure it was real. "Thank you," she whispered. Miguel leaned back, rubbing his hands together. "I'll talk to Mrs. Peterson. She saw enough to back this up. Diesel, you get Harris on the line." "On it," Diesel said, already fishing for his phone. Jack watched Lydia for a moment longer. She looked fragile, yes, but there was a quiet fire beneath that fear, the same fire he'd seen in Eli's eyes. "Lydia," he said gently, "when he starts yelling, when you feel the walls closing in, don't wait for the perfect moment. Just go, take the key, and go." She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," Jack said, "by trusting us." Outside, the clouds began to break apart, a thin ray of sunlight slipping across the street, touching the motorcycles parked by the curb. For the first time in a long while, it felt like Bozeman could breathe again. By afternoon, the rain had eased, leaving behind the faint smell of pine and wet asphalt. Lydia Turner drove home in silence, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. The key Jack had given her sat on the passenger seat, small, heavy, full of promises she didn't dare believe yet. Eli sat beside her, his backpack hugged close. "Mom," he said softly, "are we going to the clubhouse now?" "Not yet, sweetheart," she answered. "We'll pack a few things first, just in case." The house on Rouse Avenue looked almost peaceful in the late Sunday. But peace, Lydia knew, could be an illusion, a quiet surface over deep water. She parked out front, the sound of the engine ticking as it cooled. Inside, the air felt wrong. The curtains were drawn tight, the living room dark even with daylight outside. Eli stopped at the doorway, clutching her hand. "Mom," he whispered. Lydia's heart pounded. She called out softly, "Carl?" No answer, only the faint buzz of the refrigerator and the creak of old floorboards beneath her shoes. She moved to the hallway, nerves alive like static. The bedroom door was half open. She nudged it gently and froze. The closet had been emptied, drawers pulled out, clothes missing. The picture frame of Carl and her from last summer lay shattered on the floor. His boots were gone. So were his tools. For a long moment, she stood perfectly still, her mind racing to catch up. Then, with a trembling breath, she whispered, "He's gone." Eli blinked. "Gone where?" "I don't know." She dropped to her knees, pulling him close. "But right now, that's not our problem. Pack your things. We're leaving tonight." Eli nodded, running upstairs. Lydia stayed there on the floor for a moment longer, shaking, half in relief, half in fear. Sometimes disappearance wasn't freedom, it was just the eye of a storm. At the Iron Compass Clubhouse, Jack and Diesel were already setting up the spare room clean sheets, a heater, and a plate of sandwiches on the dresser. Miguel returned from the school with papers in hand. "Got confirmation," he said, handing them to Jack. "Mrs. Peterson saw the bruise weeks ago. School nurse made a note too. That's enough for Harris to act." Jack scanned the papers, jaw tightening. "Good, but we're not waiting till morning. They move in tonight." Diesel looked toward the window. "You really think she'll leave him?" Jack didn't look up. "She already has. She just doesn't know it yet." He folded the papers neatly, slipped them into his jacket, and grabbed his truck keys. The air outside smelled of damp soil and gasoline, the scent of something about to change. By the time Lydia finished packing, night had fallen. The town was quiet, the kind of quiet that hummed just before trouble. She double-checked the doors, stuffed the last of their clothes into a duffel bag, and tucked Eli's photo of the bikers into the side pocket. "Ready?" she asked. Eli nodded, yawning. "Yeah." They stepped onto the porch. The street was empty, silver under the lamplight. Lydia locked the door and turned toward the car. Her breath fogged in the cold air. Halfway down the steps, a sound broke the stillness, a low rumble, deep and slow. Headlights appeared at the far end of the street, cutting through the dark like twin blades. The sound grew louder, closer. Lydia's chest tightened. She recognized that engine before she saw the truck. "Mom?" Eli whispered. Her voice trembled. "Get in the car, baby. Now." The truck rolled to a stop in front of the house, lights blazing white against the porch. Lydia's heart slammed in her chest until the driver's door opened, and she saw him. Jack Monroe stepped out, his jacket glistening with rain. Relief hit her like air after drowning. "I thought," she started. "I know," he said softly, raising a hand. "He's gone, but not for long. You're coming with us. Tonight." Eli appeared beside her, eyes wide but steady. "Are we really safe now?" he asked. Jack looked at the boy for a long moment, the glow of the headlights washing over all three of them. He didn't lie. "Not yet," he said quietly. "But you will be." Behind him, the other bikes began to arrive one by one, their lights flickering to life along the street, surrounding the little blue house in a halo of chrome and thunder. And for the first time, Lydia didn't feel trapped. She felt guarded. The sky over Bozeman was still ink black when Jack's convoy rolled out, engines echoing through the sleeping town like a distant promise. Lydia sat in the front seat of Jack's truck, Eli curled beneath a blanket in the back. The headlights stretched long across the wet road, cutting through the last traces of mist. Jack drove steady, eyes fixed ahead. The roar of the bikes behind him was both shield and warning, a wall of sound that said, "You're not alone anymore." Lydia broke the silence first. "He'll come after us, won't he?" Jack didn't sugarcoat it. "He might, but by then, we'll be ready." She gripped the key in her hand, the one he'd given her at the diner. "I've never done this before, running." "You're not running," he said quietly. "You're choosing peace." The words settled between them like the first calm after a storm. When they reached the clubhouse, dawn had begun to creep over the horizon. The Iron Compass compound looked almost gentle in the early light, a converted warehouse surrounded by pine trees, the gravel drive shining with dew. The bikers dismounted in unison, the hum of engines fading into bird song. Miguel opened the door to the small guest room, the heater humming softly inside. "It's not much," he said, "but it's safe." Lydia stood there, eyes glassy, as Eli wandered to the window, staring out at the line of motorcycles. "Are they all your friends?" he asked. Jack smiled faintly. "Brothers, more like, we look after our own." Eli nodded solemnly, then whispered, "Does that mean we're your own now?" Jack hesitated, not because he didn't want to answer, but because of the weight of what that meant. He finally said, "Yeah, kid, that's exactly what it means." Lydia turned away quickly, hiding the tears that rose without warning. By mid-morning, Sheriff Harris arrived. His cruiser crunched the gravel, sunlight glinting off the polished hood. He was a man in his 50s, broad-shouldered, with a calm that came from years of walking into other people's chaos. Jack met him halfway. "Thanks for coming, Jim." Harris nodded. "You said it was urgent." His eyes flicked toward the clubhouse, then back to Jack. "You're sheltering the Turners?" "Just keeping them safe until we can file." Harris sighed. "Jack, you know how this looks. Folks still talk about your old ways, the bar fights, the raids." Jack folded his arms. "Then let them talk. I'm not that man anymore." The sheriff studied him, then softened. "You've been trying to prove that for years." Jack's voice dropped. "Maybe this is how I finally do." They walked inside together. Lydia sat at the kitchen table, fingers wrapped around a mug of coffee she hadn't touched. Eli was sketching something on a napkin, a motorcycle with angel wings. Harris introduced himself, voice gentle. "Ma'am, I need to ask a few questions about Carl." Lydia nodded, though her throat looked tight. "He hits me when he's angry. He drinks, yells, breaks things. But it got worse when he started going after Eli." Eli looked up, eyes wide. But Jack gave him a small nod, a silent, "You're safe." Harris scribbled notes. "You got proof?" Miguel stepped forward, dropping the folder onto the table, photographs, statements, medical records. Harris opened it slowly, eyes scanning each page. When he reached the nurse's report, his face hardened. "That's enough for a restraining order," he said. "Maybe more." Jack exhaled. "You'll file it? Today," Harris said firmly. "But you should know once it's in." He'll know we're coming. Jack nodded. Let him come. He won't find what he left behind. Outside, Diesel leaned against his bike, staring down the long road that cut through the valley. You really think this ends clean? Jack joined him, lighting a cigarette, though he didn't smoke much anymore. Nothing ever ends clean, brother, but maybe it can end right. They watched the sun rise over the pines, light stretching across the clubhouse roof like a silent vow. Inside, Lydia was folding Eli's clothes into the small dresser, her hands shaking less than they had yesterday. The boy placed his drawing on the nightstand, a row of motorcycles forming a heart around a small house. Mom, he whispered, can I give this to Jack? She smiled through tears. I think he'd like that very much. Eli nodded, proud, then looked out the window. A hawk glided over the valley, wings catching the light. For the first time in months, he didn't feel afraid of what was coming next. But somewhere out there, down a winding road that led toward the state line, Carl's truck rumbled back to life, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his eyes set on Bozeman. The road leading back into Bozeman cut through the valley like a scar. Carl Benson gripped the steering wheel of his truck so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The cracked radio hissed with static, and every now and then he muttered to himself, words slurred with anger and cheap whiskey. They think they can take what's mine, he growled. He'd seen the video online, the one where those bikers had shown up at the school, standing with Eli like he belonged to them. The comments below it burned in his head. Real men protect the weak. Those bikers are heroes. Each one was gasoline on a fire that had been waiting for years to burn. The closer he got to town, the darker the thoughts became. At the Iron Compass Clubhouse, afternoon light streamed through the tall windows, throwing gold onto the polished bikes lined against the wall. Eli was helping Miguel clean the tools, while Lydia talked softly with Jack in the next room. You're sure Harris filed it? She asked, voice low. Jack nodded. He did. The papers are official. If Carl shows up, we call it in and stay calm. Lydia hesitated. Do you ever get tired of fighting other people's battles? Jack's gaze drifted toward the door where Eli's laughter echoed faintly. Not when the battle's worth it. She smiled faintly, a tired, grateful curve of her lips. You remind me of my husband sometimes. The way he looked at the world before the war took everything from him. Jack didn't answer right away. He was staring at a photo pinned to the corkboard, his old unit from 20 years ago, the same one where his best friend had died. He finally said, then maybe this is me trying to make up for not saving him. Before Lydia could reply, the rumble of an engine rolled through the quiet. Not one of theirs. Heavier? Uneven? Diesel appeared in the doorway, frowning. Jack, we got company. Jack's stomach sank. He walked outside, sunlight sharp in his eyes. Down the gravel road, Carl's rusted truck kicked up dust like smoke. It pulled to a hard stop near the gate. Carl stepped out, broad shoulders and bloodshot eyes, anger radiating off him in waves. His jaw flexed when he saw Lydia on the porch. You think you can hide her from me? He shouted. You think she belongs with you people? Jack kept his voice calm. She doesn't belong to anyone, Carl. Don't talk to me like you know my life. Carl's boot scraped against the gravel as he took a step forward. That's my son in there. Eli had come to the door without meaning to. He froze when he saw Carl. The boy's instinct was to back away, but Jack raised a hand, gently stay behind me. Diesel and Miguel moved into position, flanking the porch like silent guards. Carl sneered. What is this? Your little gang of heroes? You think you can scare me? Jack didn't move. No, we're not here to scare you. We're here to stop you. Oh, Carl laughed a harsh, broken sound. You can't stop me. You think a bunch of washed-up bikers get to tell me how to raise my family? Lydia's voice cracked across the air. You stopped being family the moment you raised your hand to my child. That froze him. For a brief second, something almost human flickered in his eyes, then it hardened again. He turned back to Jack. You think you can take my family? He snarled, voice low and shaking with fury. Jack stepped forward until they were face to face. No, he said evenly. I think your family already left. Carl's jaw clenched, his breath ragged. His eyes darted between Lydia, Jack, and the row of silent motorcycles, gleaming like sentinels in the Sunday. He spat on the ground. This isn't over. Then he climbed back into his truck, gravel spraying as the tires spun. The roar of the engine faded down the road until there was nothing left but dust and the steady thump of Eli's heartbeat in his chest. Jack exhaled slowly, only then realizing his fists were clenched. Lydia reached for her son, pulling him close. "He'll come back," she whispered. Jack nodded grimly. "Maybe. But next time, he won't find us unprepared." He looked toward the horizon, where storm clouds were building again, black, heavy, inevitable. Inside the clubhouse, Eli's drawing of motorcycles around a small house fluttered in the draft, one corner lifting as if bracing for the wind to come. 2 days passed, but the dust from Carl's truck still seemed to hang over Bozeman. The Iron Compass clubhouse stayed quiet, the men alert but pretending everything was normal. Eli sat at the counter coloring, while Lydia folded laundry in the corner. Every sound, a truck outside, a door creak, made her flinch. Jack noticed. He poured her another cup of coffee. "You're safe here," he said softly. She gave a tired smile. "I want to believe that." Miguel came in holding his phone. "Harris just called. They served the order. Carl's not allowed within 500 feet. Lydia exhaled, trembling. "So that's it? It's over?" Jack shook his head. "Paper can't stop a man like him, but it gives us the right to." She stared at him, unsure if she should be relieved or terrified. Later that evening, Jack found Eli sitting on the back steps, staring at the horizon. The boy held a small wrench in his hand, fidgeting with it. "You thinking about your dad?" Jack asked. Eli nodded. "He used to fix things. Said if something's broken, you try before you throw it away." He looked up. "Can people be fixed too?" Jack took a long breath. "Yeah, kid, but they gotta want it." Eli smiled faintly. "Then maybe Carl doesn't." Jack looked at him, the bruises gone, but the fear still there, and realized the boy had already learned more about life than most grown men. Inside, the phone rang. Diesel answered, his expression darkening. "Jack," he called, "you'd better hear this." It was Sheriff Harris, his voice grim. "Carl never showed to sign the restraining order. His landlord says he cleared out this morning. Truck's gone. You might have company soon." "Oh." Jack's gaze shifted to the window, where Eli and Lydia were laughing softly over a puzzle. The moment looked fragile, like glass about to crack. He set the phone down, jaw tight. "Then we don't wait anymore," he said quietly. "We finish this before he does." Outside, thunder rumbled far off in the mountains, a warning wrapped in wind. That night, the storm came back. Wind rattled the windows of the clubhouse, and rain drummed steady on the roof. Inside, the bikers kept a quiet watch. Diesel near the door, Miguel by the garage, Jack pacing the hall. Lydia tried to read, but her eyes kept drifting to the window. Every flash of lightning made her tense. Eli slept curled on the couch, the faint glow of a night light brushing across his face. Jack stopped beside her. "You should try to rest." "I can't," she whispered. "Every time it rains, I hear his truck." He sat across from her, voice low and steady. "If he comes, we'll know." "You have my word." But even as he said it, a sound rose over the storm, faint at first, then unmistakable, the deep growl of an engine. Diesel appeared in the doorway, raincoat dripping. "Jack, headlights, coming up the road." Jack's pulse kicked. "Everyone inside now." Lydia grabbed Eli, holding him tight. "Jack, stay with Miguel," he said, moving toward the door. Outside, the rain blurred everything into streaks of silver. Carl's truck lurched through the mud, headlights cutting through the dark like knives. He slammed the door and shouted through the storm, "Lydia, you can't hide from me." Jack stepped off the porch, calm but solid. "It's over, Carl. Go home." "You don't tell me what's over," Carl shouted, stumbling forward. "She's mine. That kid's mine." Lightning split the sky. For a moment, Jack saw the man clearly, wet hair plastered to his face, rage hollowing him out. Jack didn't raise his voice. "You had your chance to be their family. You lost it." Carl lunged, slipping in the mud. Diesel moved fast, grabbing his arm and twisting him down before he could swing. Miguel pulled the truck keys from his pocket. Carl fought, shouting curses until his strength broke. Rain plastered his shirt to his back as he gasped, half in anger, half in defeat. Sheriff Harris's cruiser lights appeared moments later, red and blue flashing through the downpour. He stepped out, expression heavy but resolute. "Carl Benson," he said. "You're under arrest for assault and violation of a protective order." As Harris cuffed him, Carl looked up at Jack, eyes wild. "You think you won?" Jack shook his head slowly. "No, I think we stopped losing." The cruiser pulled away, taillights fading into the storm. Inside, Lydia was crying quietly, her hand on Eli's hair. The boy stirred, blinking awake. "Mom, are we safe?" She looked at Jack standing in the doorway, soaked to the bone, nodding once. "Yes, baby, we're safe now." Outside, thunder rolled away into the distance. For the first time in a long while, the rain sounded like peace. Morning came soft and clean after the storm's sunlight spilling through the pines, steam rising from puddles across the gravel lot. The Iron Compass clubhouse looked different in that light. Not like a fortress anymore, but a home that had been standing guard through the night. Lydia stepped outside with 2 mugs of coffee, her hair still damp but her face calmer than it had been in weeks. She found Jack sitting on the porch steps, elbows on his knees, watching the valley below. "Hardly slept?" she asked, handing him a mug. He smiled faintly. "Didn't have to. Quiet feels strange after so much noise." She took a sip and nodded. "Strange, but good." They sat for a while, letting the quiet breathe between them. No sirens, no shouting. Just birds and the wind through the evergreens. Inside, laughter replaced the old silence. Eli was in the garage, sleeves rolled up, watching Miguel teach him how to change spark plugs. Diesel handed him a wrench almost as long as his arm. "Careful there, kid," Diesel said. "That's a grown-up tool." Eli grinned. "Guess that means I'm halfway there." The men chuckled. Jack watched from the doorway, arms folded, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Looks like you've got yourself a mechanic," Miguel said. "Maybe," Jack replied. "Or maybe a teacher." Eli looked up. "You mean like career day?" Jack nodded. "Something like that." The boy's face lit up. "Then, I guess I already know who I'd bring." That line hit Jack deeper than he expected. He turned away before the emotion showed too much on his face. Later, Lydia found him by the bikes, wiping his hands with a rag. "You did it," she said quietly. "You gave him something to believe in again." Jack shook his head. "He gave it to me first." She smiled, then hesitated. "The sheriff says Carl might face a year, maybe more. He's fighting it, but the evidence—" "It'll hold," Jack said. "And when he gets out, he won't find the same family waiting." Her gaze softened. "You sound like someone who's been there." He met her eyes, the pain old but honest. "I have. I lost my wife because I thought control was love. Took me years to learn that letting go is what saves you." Lydia reached out, touching his arm lightly. "Then maybe you're exactly the kind of man Eli needed." He didn't answer, but the way his jaw eased said enough. By dusk, the clubhouse felt alive again, music low on the radio, the smell of chili from the kitchen, laughter rising from the garage. Eli sat on the porch railing, legs swinging, watching the sky fade from gold to violet. When Jack joined him, the boy said, "You think my dad can ever change?" Jack looked out toward the horizon, where the sun dipped behind the hills. "People can change, Eli. But sometimes it takes walking away to make it happen." Eli nodded slowly, then smiled. "Then maybe he'll see what family's supposed to look like." The quiet settled again, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was warm. Behind them, Lydia turned off the porch light, her silhouette framed by the glow from inside. For once, the house wasn't a place to fear, but a place to rest. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the clubhouse windows. Eli stood nervously by the table, holding something wrapped in brown paper. Jack was wiping down his bike when the boy called softly, "Hey, Jack." Jack turned. "What's that you got there, kid?" Eli stepped forward, unwrapping the paper. Inside was a small leather vest, hand-stitched, a little uneven with a patch on the back that read "Honorary Brother." The letters were crooked, but the pride behind them was perfect. "I made it with Miguel," Eli said shyly. "He showed me how to cut the leather. It's not real, but you said family means showing up, right? So now you're part of ours too." For a long moment, Jack couldn't speak. He knelt down, brushing a hand across the patch. "You sure you want me in this family, huh?" Eli grinned. "You already are." Jack pulled him into a hug, rough and warm. "You're something else, kid. Lydia watched from the doorway, smiling through quiet tears. Outside, the morning breeze carried the faint sound of motorcycles starting not as a warning this time, but as a promise. Jack slipped the tiny vest on, laughter breaking through his voice. "Guess I'll have to earn this one." Eli laughed. "You already did." And for the first time in years, the clubhouse, once just steel and noise, felt like home. Spring came early that year. Snow melted off the mountains, and the roads shimmered beneath a soft morning Sunday. The Iron Compass boys had gathered one last time before Eli's big day. In the garage, the boy tugged at his tie while Lydia fixed his collar. Jack leaned against his bike, smiling. "You look sharp, partner." Eli grinned. "You think they'll let bikers at a graduation?" Jack chuckled. "They'll let family." They rode together to the small school on Main Street, a row of bikes following behind the truck, chrome glinting in the sunlight. Townsfolk turned to stare. But this time, no one looked afraid. Inside the gym, students filed in, parents waving proudly. When Eli stepped up to the podium, the noise faded. His voice trembled at first, then grew steady. "Everyone says family is who you're born with," he said. "But sometimes, family is the people who show up when you need them most." He looked at Jack, then at his mother. "They taught me that strength isn't about fighting, it's about protecting, about staying." Applause rose like thunder. Lydia's hands shook as she clapped, tears streaking her cheeks. Jack lowered his head, smiling quietly. Outside, when it was all over, Eli ran to him and held out his cap. "You can keep it," he said, "for luck." Jack took it carefully. "I think you're the lucky one, kid." Eli laughed. "Yeah, but you helped." The sun dipped low behind the hills as the bike started again, rumbling in harmony, not as noise, but as music. The years moved quietly, the way mountain seasons do, one fading softly into the next. Bozeman changed. So did everyone who stayed. The Iron Compass clubhouse still stood by the old gravel road, weathered but proud, its walls carrying the sound of engines, laughter, and second chances. Jack Monroe never left town, though he talked about it sometimes. He said he liked the view, the space, the way the mornings here still smelled like pine and rain. But mostly, he liked knowing that a certain family lived just 5 miles down the road. Lydia had found steady work at the hospital. Eli had grown taller than them all, the shy boy replaced by a young man with grease-stained hands and a calm voice that could steady any storm. He spent most evenings at the garage, fixing bikes that broke down along the highway. Folks around Bozeman called him the kid with the biker dads, and he never corrected them. That spring, the town held its annual community fair booths, country music, corn dogs, and a slow parade down Main Street. The Iron Compass riders led the way, their engines rumbling low and proud. Behind them, the high school band played, and the air smelled like cotton candy and barbecue. Jack rode in front, sunlight glinting off his chrome. He wore his old vest, now faded with a single new patch stitched over the heart. Family is who shows up. When the parade ended, Eli climbed off the last float and ran to him. "You came," he said, grinning, his cap still crooked from the graduation ceremony earlier that morning. "Wouldn't miss it," Jack replied. He handed him a small box, simple and unwrapped. "Your mom told me you're leaving for trade school next week." Eli nodded. "I'll be back for weekends." "I know you will." Eli opened the box. Inside was a small, worn ring, the one Jack had kept since his own daughter's wedding years ago. The inscription inside read, "Strength means staying." Eli looked up, eyes shining. "You sure you want me to have this?" Jack nodded slowly. "It's been waiting for the right person, someone who learned what it means." Lydia joined them, her eyes bright with pride. "You've done good, Jack, for him and for all of us." He smiled quietly. "You did the hard part. You stayed." The fair music drifted around them, fiddles, laughter, the smell of grilled corn. Eli slipped the ring on his finger and looked toward the horizon, where the mountains shimmered gold in the late light. "Feels strange," he said softly. "Like the start of something, and the end of something else." "That's how life works," Jack replied. "You ride long enough, you learn when to keep going and when to go home." And they stood together for a while, 3 people who had once been strangers and somehow ended up as family. Later, when the fair lights dimmed and the crowd thinned, Jack rode his bike up the ridge overlooking the valley. The air was cool and clean, the sky scattered with stars. Down below, the town glowed warm little points of light flickering through the quiet. He parked by the overlook and sat for a while, hands resting on the handlebars. The sound of a distant engine echoed faintly. Maybe Eli heading home on his first solo ride. Jack smiled. He thought about everything that had led to this, the boy with the black eye, the frightened mother, the night of rain and thunder that had almost gone the other way. And now, peace. Not perfect, not permanent, but real. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded photo, the one they'd taken outside the clubhouse that first spring after it all happened. 30 bikers in leather, a mother, and a kid smiling wider than anyone else. On the back, Eli had written in crooked letters, "Thanks for being my family." Jack set the picture on the seat, then looked toward the town one last time before dawn. "Find your people," he murmured. "Be someone's people. That's the only thing that ever matters." The wind answered, soft and steady, carrying the faint scent of oil, rain, and pine. He started the engine. The bike rumbled to life, steady and low, echoing across the valley. As he rode down the ridge, the horizon opened before him wide, golden, endless. Bozeman was behind him, but the family he helped build rode with him in every mile ahead. And somewhere in that quiet stretch of morning road, the story of a boy and a band of bikers became what it was always meant to be, not a legend, but a reminder that real strength isn't how hard you fight, it's how gently you hold on. Sometimes stories end not with fireworks, but with the soft hum of an engine heading down an open road. Jack's motorcycle disappeared into the morning light. Yet what lingered wasn't the sound of thunder, it was peace. A peace earned through kindness, through showing up when it mattered most. Eli had grown, Lydia had healed, and Bozeman, the little town that once held so much pain, had found its heartbeat again. When we think about family, most of us picture those bound to us by blood. But sometimes, family is built out of broken pieces, out of strangers who refuse to walk away. Jack and his brothers didn't rescue a boy that day. They restored something far greater. They reminded us that love isn't found in perfection or wealth. It's found in presence. And in a world that so often forgets to slow down, presence is the rarest kind of gift. Maybe that's what redemption truly looks like. Not erasing the past, but using it to light the way forward. Jack's journey wasn't about being a savior. It was about becoming human again, about finding his way back to compassion after years of silence. And in Eli's laughter, in Lydia's calm, he discovered that healing doesn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes it comes with a quiet morning, a cup of coffee shared, and the knowledge that no one is alone anymore. Love, forgiveness, and second chances, these are the roads worth traveling, no matter how old the map. Because when we choose to protect instead of punish, to listen instead of turn away, we change not only someone else's life, but our own. Like the porch light that stays on through the night, one small act of kindness can still guide lost souls home. And maybe that's the real moral here. Unconditional love has the power to rewrite even the hardest stories. Everyone deserves a family. Sometimes we just have to build it ourselves. Happiness, after all, isn't about how much we have, but about how deeply we care. So tonight, if this story touched you, take a quiet moment. Think about the people who once showed up for you, or the ones waiting for you to do the same. Maybe send a message, share a memory, or simply keep a light on for someone still finding their way. And tell me, dear friend, if this story warmed your heart. Press 1 the comments so I know you're out there listening. If you think it could be better, press 0 and share your thoughts. I'm here to learn with you. Because in the end, stories like this one aren't about endings at all. They're about us, the people who keep believing that no matter how far we've gone, there's always a way back home.